In 1778, the American Revolution was in a stalemate in the North. The British Army decided to take the war to the South. This campaign started with a string of major British victories. During the Southern Campaign, the British made three crucial mistakes that caused a reaction from the Patriot militia, which resulted in the defeat of Ferguson and the Loyalists at Kings Mountain. This defeat encouraged the Patriots and reformed their spirit of independence. On May 12, 1780, England's General Henry Clinton captured Charleston. This British victory resulted in the most Patriot prisoners captured at one time during the war. Over 5,000 men were captured, as well as 4 ships and other supplies. Now, Clinton dispatched small groups of soldiers all across the countryside to remind the people of how powerful the British were. He was hoping to scare the Patriots and rally the Loyalists to his side. After the battles at both Charleston and Camden, the Continental Army had been completely eliminated in the South. Many Southerners joined the ranks of Loyalists, some out of allegiance to the Crown, and others out of fear. For many, the war for independence looked lost. One of the leaders of Clinton's light cavalry was Lieutenant Colonel Banastre Tarleton. Tarleton was merciless to the people of the South. He was mainly known for his attack in the Waxhaws country in what is now Beaufort, South Carolina. Tarleton overwhelmed the Virginia Continentals under the leadership of Colonel Abraham Buford. According to most accounts, on May 29th, Tarleton's men slaughtered Buford's men. Tarleton offered Buford a chance to surrender before the battle began. Buford declined. Instead, he prepared his men for the attack. Tarleton sent his cavalry to break the defensive line. He succeeded. Buford's men were pleading for quarter. They surrendered their weapons. After this, Tarleton's men began stabbing Buford's men. A testimony by Dr. Robert Brownfield describes the scene. They went over the ground, plunging their bayonets into anyone that exhibited any signs of life, and in some instances, where several had fallen one over the other, these monsters were seen to throw off on the point of the bayonet the uppermost to come at those beneath. In the end, 113 Patriots were killed and 203 were taken as prisoner. 150 were wounded and left for dead on the ground where they lay. The reaction to this massacre was anger and outrage. The people began calling Tarleton the Bloody Bane. From this point on, men would rally to the call of "Remember the Waxhaws." As word of Tarleton's actions spread to Tennessee, a group of men known as the Over Mountain Men decided to head to South Carolina to fight against the British. These men would help lead Colonel Ferguson's defeat later at Kings Mountain. During this time, Francis Marion, otherwise known as the Swamp Fox, was in command of only 50 militiamen. Using tactics he learned from the Cherokee during the French and Indian War, he attacked the British. He would lead small raids that damaged British units and then would retreat back into the forest and swamps where no one could find them. Because the British could not find him, they had to divide their forces, which weakened them. When the British couldn't fight him directly, they decided to attack the towns where the militiamen's families lived, in hopes to draw them out. They would burn down homes and farms. They also burned down Presbyterian churches. The members of the Presbyterian Church were largely Scots-Irish. These men were hard-working and determined. They cared about their families and their homes. Their reaction to their churches being destroyed was to seek revenge. They would also help defeat Ferguson at the Battle of Kings Mountain. Colonel Patrick Ferguson was dispatched to Charleston, South Carolina, to serve under Cornwallis. After the British victory at Camden, Ferguson had to secure the backcountry and protect Cornwallis. To do this, he sent a message to Colonel Isaac Shelby, one of the Patriot militia leaders in the West. In his message, he said they should desist from their opposition to the British arms and take protection under his standards. If they did not, he would march his army over the mountains, hang their leaders, and lay their country to waste with fire and sword. By doing this, Ferguson was signing his own death warrant. Isaac Shelby took the message to John Sevier, commander of the Washington County Militia, and also his friend. They decided to take immediate offensive position. They would need more men to help. They sent letters requesting help to Colonel Charles McDowell of Burke County, North Carolina Militia, and Colonel William Campbell of the Virginia settlements. On September 25th, 1780, the Patriots began to arrive at Sycamore Shoals near present-day Elizabethton, Tennessee, and form their small army. With the gathering of 5 groups of militia, Isaac Shelby's force grew to over 1,100 men. On October 2nd, they prepared for their encounter with Ferguson. Benjamin Cleveland gathered the men around him. He told the men, "When we encounter the enemy, don't wait for the word of command. Let each one of you be your own officer, and do the very best you can, taking every care you can of yourself, and availing yourself to every advantage that chance may throw in your way." For the next 3 days, they chased after Ferguson. On October the 6th, these men traveled 21 miles to reach the cowpens. They were joined by 400 South Carolinians, led by Colonel James Williams. A spy reported that Ferguson was headed to Kings Mountain the next day. The leaders decided to take their best horsemen straight to Kings Mountain. At 8 p.m., they began marching towards Kings Mountain. The rest of the men would follow as quickly as they could. The soldiers grew weary from marching all day through rain without any food. What kept them going was they realized Ferguson was camped ahead, and this was their chance to catch up. At 3 in the afternoon on Saturday, October 7th, they reached the base of Kings Mountain. The Patriot army divided into smaller divisions. They surrounded the mountain. They began to ascend. Before they were all in position, the battle began, when Ferguson's army fired upon them. The Patriots returned fire.
And so once the shooting started, it was basically each man for himself. They couldn't fire in disciplined volleys like the regular troops of the American Continental Army and the British Regular Army were trained to do. And that's not how they wanted to fight anyway. Particularly at battles like Kings Mountain, they were advancing up the mountain, hiding behind trees and rocks and using natural cover, and gradually working their way up the mountain. At the same time, they were dodging the volleys that were fired by the British and Loyalist troops.
The Patriots were looking for Ferguson. They had been told that he was wearing a checkered shirt and that he would be using a silver whistle. Ferguson's men wanted to surrender, but he forced the men to fight on. He made one final charge to break through the Patriot line. At that time, the riflemen saw Ferguson and shot. He was hit by 6 bullets. With Ferguson dead, and no encouragement to continue, the battle was over, only an hour after it had started. This was a turning point of the war in the South.
It's considered a turning point. Not only did it frustrate Cornwallis's plans, but it actually caused him to cancel his invasion of North Carolina. He abandoned Charlotte within a few days of Ferguson's defeat.
British General Henry Clinton said Kings Mountain so encouraged the spirit of rebellion in the Carolinas that it could never afterwards be humbled. The war no longer looked hopeless. The spirit of independence had been reformed. The British, led by Tarleton, would meet the Patriots again at the Cowpens 3 months later. They were again defeated. Because of these losses, Cornwallis decided to retreat from the South. He headed to Yorktown, Virginia. George Washington would end the war here. Cornwallis would be forced to surrender. This would end the American Revolution. After 3 years of fighting, who could predict that the war would be decided in the backwoods of South Carolina, in a battle that only lasted 65 minutes, and from that, a new nation would be formed. Mountain.